but it still felt like at times their defense kind of breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
At certain times, the rotations aren't quite there. And I don't know, is that coaching or is that these guys kind of losing focus? Because defense is all about focus and knowing where you're supposed to be and who's rotating, all those things. But to Saul's point, it's all confounded. I don't know why this team has these moments where they just disappear.
How much of this loss do you put at the feet of Frank Vogel and the coaching staff? So we got a super chat from Scott. Thank you for your super chat. Scott said, time to replace Vogel with Young. If Young doesn't work out, then hire Kerr in the offseason. But beyond this comment, there were quite a few in the chat that have been pointing out coaching as one of the culprits for this fourth quarter continued struggle bus.
I think this is a meltdown by a lot of different people, and coaching included. You know, I don't know why they went away from the book starting the fourth quarter minutes. I thought that that's something that at least slowed down the chaos that was happening in the fourth quarters of late. And but they opted to sit book down. I get the 4 fouls, but you know, it's the fourth quarter. It's just, I don't know. I am confounded by this team and by Frank Vogel at times. I just don't understand some of the decisions that they make, and it leads to a lot of distrust about this team because I don't know what to believe in. Like, the numbers will tell you one thing, but then you look at how they play sometimes, and you're like, man, but my eyes are telling me something completely different. And it's super frustrating. You know what I mean? And so this is just another example of that. And Frank Vogel he's got to do better. He does have to do better. He's got to understand what is really going to work against a team like the Hawks. And I felt like he was experimenting a little too much, especially in the second half, with guys that weren't really performing.
I mean, who was not performing?
Well, like Eubanks wasn't playing very well, and I'm like, I get you're gonna throw him in there in spot minutes. I get that, but I didn't feel like he was really a factor like he had been. He had been playing at a high level. He wasn't playing very well. I would have preferred to stick with Nurk a few more times than Eubanks. KBD was pretty good in the first half, I thought. In the second half, I thought he was kind of not really much of a factor. I mean, you know, you got Metu and you got Nas Little on the side, and I know there's other things going on, but that's all I'm going to say. I
don't know. I didn't have a problem with the Eubanks minutes. He still brought some energy. He had 6 points on 3-3 shooting, four rebounds. There were a few times I would have rather he grab the ball than tip it out and stuff. Yeah. I just my issue is the book thing. You know, I think from time to time Frank falls into that Monty thing where he doesn't take a timeout when runs start happening a little bit.
I disagree. I feel like he's really good about that.
I don't know. I think we're
This
nitpicking.
is a perfect example. It's confounding. You don't know what to believe in, and it's confusing sometimes. Sometimes there's a rhythm to it. Sometimes there's not, and that could be said for players and coaches. Like, I just don't know what to see.
But I feel like our impulse when we're confused by something or when something doesn't make sense on the court is to chalk it up as a coaching thing and call it that. Like, oh, the coach isn't motivating them the right way, or the coach isn't doing this and that. I agree. I think Book should start fourth quarters, and they need to tinker around with that a little bit more and continue to experiment. I was kind of disappointed they went away from that tonight. But, like, Vogel is not the reason that Kevin Durant is getting stripped. He's not the reason that Eric Gordon is tiptoeing on the sideline and falling out of bounds. Like, these are plays that veterans of their caliber should be able to make. And a lot of their missed shots, their defensive lapses, their turnovers, like, these are just confounding plays because we don't understand why players this good are not figuring it out in that regard. That's not a coaching thing.
But that might be why you're looking to blame the coaching staff, is because you're like, it's Kevin freaking Durant.
But Kevin freaking Durant turns the ball. He's turned the ball over like that for years. Like, he's been a high turnover guy, but he's phenomenal in every other area of the game. Like, going back and watching his tape from Brooklyn when he first came here, I was kind of flabbergasted. Like, damn, he loses the handle a little bit. He gets stripped more than I thought he did, honestly, at this stage. But everything else that he does is way more important than that. So it's just one of those things that when you have superstars, they're going to have the ball a lot. They're going to turn the ball over quite a bit. you hope that they're not the live ball ones that KD has sometimes where he throws it cross court, gets picked off for a pick six. Like that's, I don't know.
I tend to agree. I'm there with Saul that this team is confounding in a lot of ways, and I don't understand what is what. The thing that I think this team loses focus sometimes, it feels like, and I don't know. I don't think that's on the coach, but like we were talking before the end, they were over the last 10 games before this, they were ranked second in net offense, 11th in net defense. But it still felt like at times their defense kind of breaks down. At certain times, the rotations aren't quite there. And I don't know, is that coaching or is that these guys kind of losing focus? Because defense is all about focus and knowing where you're supposed to be and who's rotating, all those things. But to Saul's point, it's all confounded. I don't know why this team has these moments where they just disappear and turn into a team that reminds you very much of 19-win Suns teams in the way they take over or don't take care of the ball or don't rotate appropriately on defense.
My concern is that I don't think there is this mindset, but my concern is the mindset that kind of reflects a lot of what some of us say from time to time is that, like, you know, we got time to work these things out. They'll get better as the season goes on. There's still time. There's still time. And yeah, there is still time until there isn't. And you get eliminated. Then you're like, damn, we probably should have fixed this, this, and this. You know what I mean? And so I just hope that we're not going towards that path where we see these things. You know, Book said that in the 64-win season, there were things that needed to be improved, but because they were winning, it kind of hid those blemishes. And they're not winning nearly as much as they were in that 64-win season right now. But because you have the talent of the big three, maybe it's giving you a false sense of security that, you know what, at some point we're all going to click and it's going to be okay. And I'm just not that fervent of a believer that that's going to be the case. At some point, you have to improve. You have to be better with the ball. When you have in the high teens amounts of turnovers for a professional basketball team, that is going to cost you games. And it has for the Suns multiple times. When you get out rebounded, when you get less shots than the other team, like it feels like every single game we're getting less shots than the other team right now. And it's just, these are the things that can be prevented and need to be prevented if you have any aspirations of doing anything in the playoffs. And that's my concern.
But wouldn't you say, though, I totally agree with that, because I don't think it's a guaranteed that this team is just going to suddenly click and magically be a title contender. But when you say we should probably wait until after they played 20 games together to start ruling definitively either way. Like there's still only, what was this, game 18
I'm tired of waiting.
Tonight? I know you are. I know everyone is. But like, I keep going back to this.
We've been
it's
waiting
not
all
going to
season.
fucking happen on your terms. It's going to happen when they get enough reps together. Like
I
that's
know.
what it is.
But I'm tired.
So this is my other thing. Okay, if we're gonna say that, are we talking about just the big three or the entire team?
I'm talking about the big three. I'm talking about the starting lineup. I'm talking about more games for him to figure out, okay, who is in this rotation, this playoff rotation, because it feels like we're getting closer. If you look at the guys that have been playing over this last week or two, it's Drew Eubanks, it's KBD, it's Josh Okogie, it's Eric Gordon, and all four of them have showed flashes of moving towards something more stable, like moving towards something a little bit more consistent. Like Gordon was shooting the lights out. He was only 2 for 5 tonight, but he's been good. Okogie had a string of good games, wasn't great tonight. But Drew Eubanks, 3 for 3. I think he's missed like 2 shots in the last 2 weeks overall. Like we're getting closer, but it's not going to magically click. It's not going to happen overnight. And they're still being able to string along wins while they face these junk defenses that they're seeing every night. So I get it's frustrating, but that's kind of going back to what you were talking about when Book was saying we're getting adversity. We're seeing different looks. We're seeing all this different stuff. Like it's not going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be choppy waters, but you hope that when you get through the other side of it, you're prepared for a lot of what you're going to see come playoff time when you are getting hit with all these junk looks and all these different things that they're going to throw at you.
I get it. And I understand the games with the big three. Sunday marks the 50th game overall for the team. I get the big three at that point will have only played 19, but we're seeing the same mistakes. If there were like a bunch of different things and it was different things that were occurring that were causing the issues, I tend to agree, but we're seeing the same mistakes.
In losses.
In losses, yes. And
We
not-
can't just ignore
Well,
the win.
no,
not
because-
necessarily.
We
Not
see it
necessarily.
happens in wins.
Yeah.
The Suns just are able to get the win,
In the
but
fourth
they're
quarters,
still
yes.
there.
In the
no,
fourth
just like
quarters,
in
yes.
general, like for instance, like I can understand chemistry issues when you think somebody's going to make a backdoor cut and they don't, and you throw the backdoor cut and it goes out of bounds. Like I can deal with that kind of stuff, but it's the dribbling off the foot, it's the lazy passes that they have full control over, but they're just playing sloppy. That's just sloppy basketball, and that happens in the wins and the losses. It's not just the losses for sure. And those are the things that need to be tightened up. And even in the wins, they've been out rebounded before in the wins. They've given up more shots to the other team in wins too. But again, like either they're going to address it and get better about it or they're not. And I don't know if those things, specifically those things, turnovers and rebounds, are they going to get better just because they're playing more together as a team by the time they get to game 82? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the fear is, okay, sure, they need more time, but you're running out of time as well. And okay, what happens if they don't get it together? Well, you have no options after, 6 days from now to make any changes. So then it winds up just being a lost season because nothing does change, even with more time. And I think that's the fear for people. That's why it's I want to know now because I'm not going to have an opportunity to change anything.
The shit show is coming. And if they don't fix it right now, they will not have any other opportunities to be able to fix them in the off season and moving forward. And that's the panic that Espo's talking about. It's like, like this team is going to be extremely limited moving forward after this trade deadline season. So there's a little bit of a sense of urgency, I would say for sure. And maybe that is contributing to a little bit of the panic that we have after some of these losses, because we're hoping that they're going to figure it out because we feel like, shit, like I don't know what's going to happen after this season. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and just the expectations that we all had coming into this season too. Like, don't get me wrong, I know we talked ourselves into some of the guys that are coming off the bench for the squad, but like as far as the big three, the starters, like Grayson Allen has outperformed what I think we all anticipated him to. So that's been a pleasant surprise. But even knowing that was a surprise, I still think we expected, the big three plus Grayson Allen or the starters, whoever that fifth starter was, to be better than sort of what we've gotten all season. And I know a large majority of the reason has been injuries. And that's out of their control entirely, but it doesn't fix the feeling. Like you have the logical side of your brain that's telling you, well, injuries make things harder to find chemistry and to build it and to go through all of this and figure it out and iron out the wrinkles. But emotionally, it doesn't matter.
I get that. But I'd never approach it from a place of emotion. Like I'm sorry, they haven't played 20 fucking games together. Like,
but
what are we
they're
doing?
They're at 18. Is 2 games going to change anything?
But I'm not saying that the 20 mark makes a big difference. I'm saying they haven't even fucking played 20 games together yet. We said coming into the season, we need to see them play 50 to 60 ideally for us to feel good. And even then, they're still at a continuity disadvantage compared to a team like the Nuggets, compared to, like, even at this point, they're going to be at a continuity disadvantage severely to a team like the Clippers. Like, that is something that talent and like sheer will is going to have to overcome. But like, they're not even 40% to what we wanted them to be to feel okay about them in a playoff series. And that's the hard part for me, is that, like, I don't know if they're going to get to that point.